Hello and welcome to Identirati Office Hours. I'm your host, Mike Schwartz, founder of Gluu. Today is episode 196, and we're welcoming back Sebastian Rohr. And let me go through all of the various titles and accolades. Founder and managing director of Umbrella Associates, the Identibeer Guy, Captain Identity, and now unofficially Mr. EIC. Welcome, Sebastian.
Thanks for having me.
And the topic today, much like the topic from 2024. Now, you were last on episode, I think, let me look at it. It was like episode 23 for June of 2024. And the topic was EIC 2024 debrief.
Yeah, like two years on, and we're still doing that. Wow.
Yes. And I'm wondering why we didn't do a 2025 debrief.
That is a good question.
I can go forward 100 episodes and see, but yeah, but okay. Well, maybe this is now officially a tradition then. And so, what happened?
A lot. Let's put it. First things first. The most important, or let's say, most impressive thing that happened was actually Elizabeth Garber with her keynote ending the day, and very human rights centric. I will refrain from diving too deep into that, but I have not seen a tech conference where a keynote speaker gets 5 minutes standing ovations for her performance. And that was not fancy. That was not a technological breakthrough. It was rather a topic that is also close to my heart, but from a different perspective. And that is actually how the stuff, the technology that we create, the solutions that we as identity management practitioners build to better the society actually can be abused by forces high above in the government, and to really, really bad results. And for me, that was especially moving because the day after, on Wednesday, I had my talk actually promoting our work in the CRVS community, so civil registries and vital statistics, because we still have a SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal of the United Nations going on, where we want to have a legal identity for every child on this wonderful earth by 2030, and we are far behind. So I was actually asking on behalf of ID Pro, our fellow Identirati to join the ranks and spend a little bit of pro bono work and helping developing countries in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia to bridge that gap and build CRVS identity management systems that will help to bring more children a birth certificate. Just as a preview here, the number of children in Pakistan that do not have a legal identity because they do not have a birth certificate is really, really big. And due to the number of births given in that country, it's growing at a rapid pace, and that has other implications. So yeah, it was definitely that human rights centered keynote that had such a power. It will be remembered.
Well, I'm sure I didn't hear it, but I'm sure it was well deserved. Elizabeth has been doing really great work. And I wanted to comment a little bit on this, the civilian registry. I think people forget, or they conflate the registry with the country's identity platform per se. And the registry, like at its simplest level, is just a database of like, and the question is how do you get in that database, right? And there's an identity management process that can, for how you register a birth, or sometimes in developing nations, you might send out somebody with a laptop to a village, and they might go around and register everybody and collect biometrics and then bring that back and then enter it into the civilian registry and then issue some type of credential, or maybe on the spot issue some type of credential. But I think it's important because I think, even in the identity industry, we sometimes conflate all of the identity infrastructure with the registry itself. And there's a very good open source product, which is a digital public good. It's called Open CRVS, I think. And that's led by Ed Dufu. And by the way, Jamton Project is a digital public good, the project that I lead at Linux Foundation. And we've had MOSIP on. MOSIP is a digital identity or credential platform. They actually have three parts of this software. They have the collection part, then they have the identity, let's say, deduplication process to make sure that somebody didn't register from two villages. And then they have a processing where they insert into the registry and issue the credential. So MOSIP is very complementary to the CRVS. I've had
but there are countries where they are co-deployed to actually integrate.
Yes.
Which is one of the things that I highlighted, and it's fun that you bring that up, because these two projects, both MOSIP and OpenCRVS, I've been let's say in touch with on a very, very soft mode for a long time, because my first project in that area was 16 years ago in 2010. I went to Jamaica. For most people, it's a holiday destination, but I worked with the government there, the Planning Institute, and that was my start of my third career in CRVS and legal identity, which would lead me to Ecuador, to Pakistan, to Myanmar, to Bangladesh, and also working on Madagascar cases. So it is something, well, just using this here as a shameless pitch, people provide to those projects. Read up on it. There is ID for Africa, a really, really good thing that's happening, self-organized in Africa to promote that. We need more of your contributions to these projects to reach that goal, to make legal identity availably to all those kids out there, because without it, you don't get healthcare, you don't get education, you don't get anything, disaster relief. It's so important. So everybody go and check out the United Nations SDG, and also MOSIP and OpenCRVS.
And one thing I wanted to point out, which is that government is comprised of a lot of enterprises. Each department or ministry is like a little enterprise IT environment with their own business objectives, and those are separate from the citizen identity platforms and the and the registry. So the need for governments doesn't stop at issuing credentials. Actually, a lot of the value that's derived from these programs is derived from the consumption of the credentials for government programs, especially the payments programs, if we're talking about social payments, but also by the private sector. So your ability to present your government credential and have it consumed by a bank that issues you a bank account. So that's really what derives a lot of the benefit. And so I think the EIC community has a role to play by helping those enterprises be able to accept these new forms of credentials. And because without that, there's no ROI on it. And your thoughts?
Yeah, it's absolutely the case, and unfortunately, even in well-developed countries, some of these enterprises within government work completely with own agendas and sometimes contradictory goals, and don't get me even started on sharing data between some of these government agencies, something that, God forbid, you can't do that. GDPR, DSGVO, it's crazy. If you if you want social benefits here in Germany, and you are really in a stressed out situation, you have to apply with, I don't know, 3 or 4 agencies, and they all demand the same information, and you have to upload it to different portals, and it's a mess. But yeah, as I said, don't get me started. There's lots of stuff we can improve with security and identity management related topics in any kind of government agency and interagency communication.
I see this as a little bit interesting, that, you know, we're saying like we should help developing nations. Actually, maybe some of these developing nations are doing a better job than the quote unquote developed nations. So
oh yes. Well, to be honest, in some of those so-called developed nations, stuff has been grown hysterically and historically, while the developing nations sometimes have a complete greenfield approach. They have nothing to build on, so you can design your architecture quite freely without too many dependencies to break. So
it's almost never true, though. There has to be something there. Actually, I was at the MOSIP conference this year, and there was a talk from, I think, Rwanda about how they did a brownfield migration from some commercial identity provider was doing their citizen identity piece, and it didn't work out, and they decided they wanted to move to MOSIP, and they did a brownfield, so an upgrade or migration off. I also heard that Nigeria is moving to MOSIP.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
That's a 250 million people person deal, and so that's also I think they have several identity things in Nigeria. So
it's like healthcare, education, disaster relief, planning, taxes. They all want information about that. In certain countries in Southeast Asia, the military, so a country that I will not name, they have a very strong military focus, and it's a public-private partnership between the military and another company that built a secondary infrastructure that hands out sort of birth certificates, but they are not birth certificates. They just help you with getting support and benefits, but they are not a legal identity. So again, don't get me started on that. Maybe we will use that to refer back to Elizabeth and her keynote, and also my presentation on the topic. So please, ladies and gentlemen, look at the agenda. You will be able to browse through it, and I tell you, it's a very rewarding work you can do there. And you mentioned something on the ramp up to this, and that's wallets. I think we need to talk wallets for EIC.
Before we get into wallets, I have this a very good comprehensive list of questions, and they go in a certain order.
Oh, of course.
I think we really need to ask their question too. Was beer consumed? And if so, what was the best beer of EIC? What was the best identity beer, would you say? Because you normally have several different.
Yes. Okay. Some of you may know that for some time now, Martin Sanderen of IKEA and myself, in collaboration with first the Kantara initiative and then the ID Pro community, have done pre-conference beer meetups, and we've been granted the honor to actually call them Identity Beer meetups. Espen Vago, as the inventor of the Identity Beer meetups, helped us formalize this. 150 people attending that pre-conference Identity Beer at the Zollparkhof with the Chancellor's Palace right on the other side of the Spree River. Really nice, wonderful weather, good beer, and that is Augustiner. I can totally recommend that. It's really good, but it's okay. Only the beer that was on tap that night. Of course, we had our own.
It was a winner by default. Is
Yeah,
is
it's
that
winner by default, like the ones that we fill from my little home village here, Braudich. So if you look for the original identity beer, it needs to have this cap. If it doesn't have that cap, it's a ripoff. Really important. I
okay?
do think that
Now back to wallets.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Oh, sorry.
so
Let me get an honorary mention for Elemity, our friends from the Benelux states. They have been issuing their own beers for quite some time. I like that quite a lot. It's good Belgian beer.
we have the best lambic style brewery in the United States here in Austin.
Nice. Okay.
Even when I go to Belgium, the lambic brewers all know about Jester King.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. I wonder. I can bring a bottle of beer. I'd have to check, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Check my luggage. Maybe
Yeah,
next year.
you should.
I'm hoping to go to EIC next year. I try and go every other year because I do think it is an important venue, and there's still a value to getting people together.
Yeah, and you get much more of the European perspective. Just going to Identiverse is not enough if you are interested in what's happening in the rest of the world, especially the European perspective. EIC is a must-attend event. And I'm not saying that being ex-coping a coal, I really believe so. This year, I will bail out of Identiverse. I won't go to Las Vegas, but Roland is going. So whoever wants one of those, find Roland. He will have a very, very limited supply this year because he flies in early through New York. So yeah, but enough with the beer.
He'll be checking luggage too.
Yeah.
So well, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I understand. Las Vegas is not the best location, although the predictability of having it at the same place, I think, has its advantages. And I like the new home for EIC, the Berlin Conference Center. I really like the location a lot, and Alexanderplatz. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? You've been to all of them.
Yeah.
What was your favorite venue? And would you say are you going to be political and go with the Berlin Conference Center, or
Okay.
what was your all-time favorite venue?
So I like the original Unterschleißheim location. It is a bit far outside the city center, but that kept everybody in one place, and you could not get away so easily. Others will have said, "Oh, we can't get away. We can't see Munich." Well, that's true. The Deutsche Museum center of the city location was nice from a building perspective, but the exhibition areas were too dark and too basement. And I totally understand that when the event grew bigger and bigger, they had to switch locations. If they did good in moving to Berlin, I don't know. Because quite frankly, the BCC, the Berlin Conference Center, is a nice location, and it has lots of hotels in direct vicinity. And I think the Motel 1 at Alexanderplatz that I stay in is more or less the unofficial home of the EIC crowd, because
Which is that?
if you haven't met somebody during the day, you will find them at the bar at the Motel 1. Very nice selection of gin tonic, by the way, no beers. Of course, they have beers, but no good ones. And I even saw Martin Kuppinger at night in that bar twice. So yeah, shout out.
A good insider tip.
Yes, absolute insider tip. I do believe that there are talks going on to relocate EIC in the next 2 to 3 years. So next year will definitely take place in Berlin. But I heard rumors. I hope I don't get any assassination now. I heard rumors that they will actually switch to another location, one that has better international airport connectivity, because Berlin.
That's true. It's ironic that Berlin doesn't have great airports, but I guess there's historical reason. Right?
So if they, and I don't know if they keep it European, or if they just switch in Germany, because the only two airports would be Munich and Frankfurt. Well, they come from Munich. That means Frankfurt, and that's hometown.
Or
So
back
yeah,
to Munich. No, I would. My vote is for Munich. Back to Munich. because I like the beer better in Munich. It's like
I totally
simple reason.
understand. Yeah, yeah.
The beer is phenomenal in Munich.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. But somewhere in the middle, maybe Nuremberg has even better beers, but an even smaller airport, so it's not gonna
Okay.
happen.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm up for that if the beer is better. You have me convinced that better beer.
yeah.
Um, so, okay, well, okay, so full pivot back to digital wallets. One of the reasons I like to go to EIC is because Europeans are ahead. And I don't even know if we even are in this race in the US, but is ahead in digital identity for citizens.
Mhm.
And so is the UD wallet real? Can you get how many country citizens can actually get it? And what's the state of play in like wallets right now?
Yeah. In Germany, it's competition. So we had a competition running where several public-private partnerships, several consortia were contributing to and building their own wallets, which I personally think is absolutely great. So there is competition, there is a cook-off of the different approaches there. I really love that Sprint, the agency for promoting leapfrog innovation in Germany, yes, that is more or less their title, with Christina Yasuda, tip to the hat, wonderful, just doing great work there, are shepherding the community towards a interoperable infrastructure that will actually get everyone closer together. So in the end, this is a European effort, and all the European Union countries are promoting this. They all have their own projects going on. Austria and some others are a little bit behind, I think, right now. The Netherlands had a great presentation from a collaboration project. One of my contacts, Ian Ketelaar from Portbase, is also contributing to a consortium called WeBuild. I loved what they presented, not only on the personal wallet, because another thing that really got a lot of attention are the so-called business wallets. And that's something where I raised an eyebrow and said, oh, that's interesting, because if my life as an entrepreneur running several companies and having to deal with different authorities, especially tax authorities, and handing in evidence about bills paid or taxes paid, I would really like to have an easier way to legitimately put these evidences into government systems. And if I, as an individual with my personal wallet, could more or less claim the wallets of my companies and then be able to step by step get all these aligned and make
So
my
not the
easier.
wallets of your companies, but ideally you'd have a UD wallet, and your company would be able to issue credentials into that UD wallet,
Yes.
so that you're not just. And we were joking about this before. I did an episode called "The Three Wallet Problem." I'll have to look back. It was probably 2 years ago, and it was basically that the first time you get a wallet, you're like, oh, this is amazing. I can use my Google Wallet or my Apple Wallet to pay for stuff. Now I don't need my credit cards. And then you get a second wallet and you're like, oh, this is cool. I can put credentials in it and present them. And then you get a third wallet and you're like, wait a second, am I going to get a wallet? And then by the time you get the fourth wallet, you're like, no, I'm not installing that wallet.
Yeah, can I integrate that, right?
So
Yeah.
my thesis is like the Google and Apple wallet's here to stay because of payments. So the second wallet, if you're saying, well, we don't trust Google and Apple to hold these credentials because they're American tech companies and they're bad, and so we're going to have a European wallet which we trust, you better make sure that more than one credential goes in there, because if it's just holding one credential, your government credential, that's not going to be good.
And don't get me wrong, I think in that idea that they are following there with the business wallet and the individual wallet, there's going to be some sort of differentiation, because the legal entity itself is a person under law, right? So it's just the representation. And I want to highlight one presentation here of Florin Koptiel of Robert Bosch GmbH, who was exactly presenting a keynote around these EU business wallets and how that could benefit. I've also been quite active in the research around machine identities in the hardware realm. So not
Wait, we hit pause for 1 second. So it sounds like I got this wrong, that we weren't talking about business credentials issued to humans, but actually you were saying a wallet that's controlled by a corporation.
Exactly.
So, and this goes along with, basically to have accountability, we need to know the humans, the software, the business units, and the third parties.
That's it. The idea behind it. I've not followed that. I am just a consumer of all these informations during the EIC. So as with all the AI agents out there, Sebastian might hallucinate and maybe has understood something wrong. So disclaimer here. But how I understood it, that this wallet
You
will
did do a
actually,
stint in Jamaica, so
will
hallucination might be
actually
possible.
represent the Umbrella Associates Limited, and that both myself and Roland, my co-founder, will be delegates of that, because we are managing directors, so we have power of attorney by law, being the registered managing directors. So we will both have the capability to use that wallet. And of course, if we need to do something on behalf of the company, we can get credentials into our personal OD wallets that will enable us to work on behalf of, with the power of attorney for that company. And that would be just great. And now comes the big thing that Florin was hinting at. We also have something in the machine realm that we call...
Can we hit pause on this? Because I'm not sure I understand yet.
Yeah.
So you are actually saying that the business will issue you a wallet and you'll just put your business credentials in that wallet? Or are you saying that these business enterprise credentials would go in the UD wallet?
They're not going in there. They're independent. So it's
So it'll be a new wallet.
It will be a new wallet, but it's not mine. It's the wallet of my company. And well, maybe in future I just die, and then suddenly I am no longer there. What would Roland do if everything was in my personal wallet? He could no longer run the business. So there is a good reason why the legal entity, Umbrella Associates, has its own business wallet, right? And I will be able to work on behalf of that business. And also every product I ship can be digitally linked to that business wallet. That was the idea behind it. So you will actually have, if I understood correctly, the interactions between an individual and another individual with OD wallets, between a business and a business through the business wallets, in credentials lying in my personal wallets, because I'm acting on behalf of my company. But the anchor, the identity anchor of my company is the business wallet.
It's an alternative to PKI, really. Because it makes sense to me, because PKI is very rigid. How do you add extra claims into an X509 certificate? Well, you could use the SAN, but it's very awkward. And so it makes it's more flexible to say my business wants to issue JWTs with claims in them instead of actually. And so we're going to use the same technology, the wallet technology. It makes sense to me. My only question would be is it's about control of private keys. And so then you're still in PKI land in terms of like, how do you protect the private keys for the organization?
Let's put it like that. You are in the realm of public-private keys, yes, but that does not necessarily mean you have to have a PKI, because we are all using passkeys, right? We're all using FIDO2 authenticators, and that's all public-private key pairs, but there's no infrastructure for the creation of those. Those are locally created. When I use Microsoft Windows Hello for Business, it's a public-private key scheme, but there's no PKI behind it. My device creates a public-private key pair and just uploads the public key. That's it.
So, okay, let's pause. We have about 15 minutes left. So let's pause, because we could talk digital wallets the whole time.
Yes, that's okay.
And I want to pivot to authorization, because last year when I was at EIC, I was giving out TBAC buttons, token-based access control.
Yeah.
And that work has really evolved into GovOps at this point. The idea that tokens are input to policy, and we've really gone a long way with that. But I think the authorization sort of landscape has also changed. We have graphs. There's a strong, there always has been a strong presence of graphs, Zanzibar style graphs.
Yes.
But now there's even more. We have SpiceDB.
Yes.
IndyKite, of course, has a great product. And then there's, there's like, I feel like there's probably 5 or 6 different graph-based access management startups right now. OSO, I think, is another one. And then we have Cedar has come along. OPA is emerged. I think OPA is essential infrastructure. But what was sort of the buzz about the state of authorization? I guess David Broussard was there representing Axiomatics, now part of Leonardo, and Alpha. So what was sort of the state of play in that space, or what was the vibe that you got?
Yeah, so the authorization space, the FGA space, and everything that is not RBAC, but all the evolutionary variety was quite present. Please bear in mind that David, on behalf of us, then got a specific EIC award for the work on that whole topic. So Martin and Kuppinger-Cole finally acknowledging that wallets alone is not the hot topic. We made that about 2 years ago, and I was grinning broadly last year because authorization was taking up some space. We see that definitely as a maturing technology part of the whole identity and access management stack. And we see more and more requests for projects in that area. So, of course, David Broussard is right. XACML is not yet dead. There is lots of zombies running around, which caters to my company, Umbrella, quite a bit. And well, we haven't been able to kill that SAML zombie for 10 years straight due to despite the fact that everybody is announcing it dead. Those who are said to be dead live longer. Yeah, it's alive and kicking. It is a very, very interesting space to be in, and we've seen quite a bit of buzz around that.
Yeah, so what I've seen has gotten more mature is AuthZen is getting good airplay.
Yeah,
and I think AuthZen has done something that XACML never could, which is universal PDP buy-in. So like, here's a baseline of what we can agree. You can send a park-shaped request to any PDP. And even if it's a graph, it's a policy engine or anything else, as long as it can answer, can this subject do this action on this resource with this context? However it figures that out, it can return you that response. I think that's progress in the space. And that
absolutely.
I'm also seeing that authorization, we're seeing more standards now. Carl McGinnis just proposed a new standard about how to negotiate if you get back a denied. how maybe you could get back more information about that and maybe then represent your request with different data. And I don't know, when I hear the challenges that companies are having, a lot of times they might phrase it in terms of, I want to issue these tokens with this information so that I can then do this access control application. So I think there is still a lot of let's say interest in controlling access to stuff with the tokens that we have, and then how do we actually govern it? Because I don't know, the one thing that I think that there's agreement on now is that RBAC is not going to be good enough of an access control model to address agentic security. And so we're moving from a period when RBAC used to be good enough, and we built not just RBAC's authorization systems, but we also built a governance practice around RBAC called IGA. And so if we're replacing that with if we're saying RBAC is not good enough, we want to replace that with some type of dynamic authorization engine, and we have no agreement on what that is. It could be a Zanzibar graph. It could be a policy engine like the Cedarling or Cerberus. And so if we have a new authorization engine, a dynamic engine, what's the corresponding governance practice? What's the IGA of dynamic authorization engines? And was there any sense of that, an answer to that at EIC, or an acknowledgement that RBAC isn't good enough?
So in a way, now our friend Andy Hindle of Identiverse fame came up with a very, very thought-provoking talk, and he just said, why are we even using the notion of a user account in the year 2026? Because it's all about access during the runtime. Why are we still chasing this approach of using that? Because we invented it like 56 years ago when we needed to allocate time slices on a mainframe. That's where accounts were invented. And he boldly said, we don't need user accounts anymore. Identity management, as it was for the last 35 years, is dead. It's only the entity, so the object and the subject that wants access to that object. Let's get rid of that whole notion of a user account and use other mechanisms to do that. He left that part open. How do we govern it? And we had a very, very interesting discussion during a side event I can unfortunately not speak too much about, but that was really good because one of the representatives said that they are already moving to, or that they already arrived at a situation that you described, where some kind of subject accesses some kind of object and they have a policy, a dynamic policy, and that currently the auditors require them not only to have the policy that was valid at that time and the policy decision, access granted, but the whole surrounding environment. So all the attributes that created that decision need to be put into the logs, and that is creating huge amounts of data, which cost a lot of money. And yeah, so the governing body or the governing layer around that really, really hard. Right now, we're creating far too many data points that are much too big. Than this person had this role, hence his account had that access.
Right.
Done, right? And now we have a zillion telemetric information that we need to save. Just some auditor 2 years later can say, yeah, it was okay that Mike had that access.
Right. I wanted to actually show, so this diagram, I don't know if I can make it bigger, but each one of these dots represents a microservice in Amazon's retail SOA. They're sort of interconnected microservices. Um, and so, and then the white lines are the connections between the microservices.
Wow. Okay.
And so the point is like actually the humans can't do it anymore,
No.
right?
We're
So
out. We're done.
humans have a huge amount of computing power, like, but but we have a really short attention span, so we can only think of like 3 to 7 things at like once. And so, so my take on it is that we really need to introduce more automation and more formal reasoning and formal verification to reduce
Wonderful.
the
Yes.
amount of work that the
Yeah.
humans need to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And so this idea of like the core idea of access of IGA was access certification campaigns where we review the roles of our reports on a periodic basis and then they're backwards looking. A lot of these agents are like ephemeral agents that live for 5 seconds. So you by the time you send the manager the report, the agent's been like gone for like, so this older approach is just not working. And so to talk about the NHI space, did
Mhm.
EIC have any discussion on this topic? How
Oh
do how
well.
do we even identify all the software that we're dealing with?
This is another great cue to the talk of Netsaki Mura, who
Hmm.
came up with two things. UBO, what he said is the ultimate bot owner. So we initiated that. I really love that. And the second thing that he came up with is agent cards. Um,
Yeah.
you remember identity cards from Microsoft? So he introduced, or
No,
he came
I
up with
don't
the
actually.
idea
I
of
don't think anyone does either.
yeah,
But go on. So agent card.
agent cards. So more or
It's
less,
probably a JWT, right?
some kind of structured information. He left that completely open. I actually went to the speaker's room afterwards and challenged him in that room to ask it, is that really feasible? If we have ephemeral agents only living for a few milliseconds, create an agent identity card and pass it around. I am the agent and Sebastian is my UBO and I have this purpose and I can I'm built for this and that, and it is gone again. I think well that is an infrastructure where we're burning 2 solar systems of energy just to create them, and mind you, we hopefully do not need X509 certificates for them because else we're all screwed, right? But yeah, that was quite interesting. NHI is, of course, an ongoing thing. Machine identity is another big topic, and we heard some presentations by Brian, for example, who said that large strategy consultancies, by his account, will in the next 6 to 12 months have more digital employees than carbon-based employees because they are spawning agents and agent networks faster than they can bury them. I found that to be interesting because this morning when I asked my currently favorite AI to help me out with something, it actually timed out and gave me an error message that, sorry, I can't help you. I'm completely overloaded. Try again later. And I said, yay, my kind consultants will not be superfluous in the next 18 months because neither NVIDIA nor SK Hynix nor Samsung can create enough chips to get all the data centers up and running. And by the way, we can't create enough energy to run them. That's the second thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a point in time where I can use AI to its fullest capability and not being limited by their availability. So hot topic, and to a direction that either will lead us to the downfall of humankind, or we will just run out of energy to run the data centers.
Yeah. Um, I'm glad you pivoted to AI. So I'll ask we're a little over on time, but I'll just ask one more follow-up question. I was recently at the MCP Dev conference, which is a Linux Foundation conference. Anthropic contributed the MCP protocol to a new foundation called the Agentic AI Foundation at the LF, and they held this conference called the MCP Dev Summit, which I thought was going to be this geekiest conference that no one was going to go to, and like 2,000 people were there. It was a big conference.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're doing them all over. So if you can connect with one of them, it's really like a formative time right now in that community. It's a good time to connect. But at that conference, I heard the term guardrails more times.
Yes.
Like, how many times at EIC did you hear somebody say the phrase guardrails for AI? And how many times do you think that they meant the same thing? That they is anyone aligned what guardrails actually means or looks like?
Yeah. All of the vendors being there, I dare say none of the keynote speakers didn't use it. I need an AI to check that. But of course, ask any of them, they all will have a different definition of the term. Some of the vendors are more in the identity management space, not dropping names here. They, of course, have more the post-mortem governance in mind, or trying to set barriers in a role-based approach, which I personally think is dead. That's not going to work. And some of them were more like, at the moment of execution, no, here, there's a limit, there's a limit, there's a limit, and taking the scopes very, very much into center stage, and making sure the agents do not exceed these. I'm definitely in the latter group, but guardrails for AI, good. Let's put that up to ID Pro and ask for a definitive explanation of what that means.
Yeah, and I'll put in my last minute plug for GovOps. Since TBAC is officially dead, and now that I know that TBAC is tobacco related, we have to just give up on TBAC. So coming up with a new back is a trope that's meant to be shot down. So I think, and it only took a year to shoot this one down, but GovOps, I think, actually has some legs. And part of the goal of GovOps is to enable companies to build guardrails for software, of which AI is a part. Because I think that there's still a lot of other software out there that's super important that also needs governance.
Yeah, a lot, like software supply chain security. Yeah, check your sources, everyone.
Yeah, and I don't think this is a product though. I don't think I can't tell you. I'm going to make fun of SecureAuth now, who used to attend EIC. I haven't seen them in a couple of years, but SecureAuth published. Finally, somebody published a solution for AI security, and it's SecureAuth. So that is finally the problem is solved, and so I feel like every single vendor has a solution, but this isn't going to be something that a vendor solve. Like, we need the ecosystem to come together, and that means vendors, integrators, and enterprise customers, and define what is this new, IGA isn't a product. IGA is not SailPoint. Actually, IGA has more vendors than any other segment in the identity industry, by far. It's like 80% of the vendors are IGA related.
Yeah.
And so we don't need some company to ship the next solution. What we need is, as an industry, to come together and to say, okay, roles no longer work. We're moving to dynamic authorization engines of all different types. How are we going to govern these dynamic authorization engines? What does that look like? What is the goal of that governance? And what are the services we need to build in order to make that happen? What are the business practices? What are the things we need people to learn and know? What's the body of knowledge? like a ID Pro in an ID Pro sense. And then I think the vendors come in and say, well, I have a good tool that can help you with secrets management for this. And I have a good tool that can help, so I think there's a lot of room for vendors, I think, to build products to help. But I feel like what's missing right now is an effort to really get the industry to come together and say, look, the problem here is interdomain. And so, no, there's not going to be one top-down solution. We need to really work together on an ecosystem. So,
Absolutely.
I'll give you last thoughts, and then we'll call it. How do you want to wrap this thing up for the audience?
So, to all the vendors out there, if your marketing makes you do a keynote about AI security next year, think twice, because I've had conversations with a few attendees from consumer organizations, and they were fed up. They felt that it was just too much marketing buzz and not enough real-time value for them. Else, I am absolutely enthusiastic about what's happening in the wallet space right now. And as I said, I have ideas around that, so watch the space. It's probably one or the other idea that will materialize out of that. Else, I can only say thanks for inviting me to that second edition of EIC review, and I'd definitely be in for next year's edition and welcoming you back to Berlin.
Maybe we should put that on the schedule right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have they announced a date yet for EIC next year? Probably, right?
To be honest.
Yeah, sure. I'll look into it. Yeah, well, a lot of, as I said, a lot of important things I think happen at EIC because it's one of the probably 4 important points on the calendar. I say EIC and Identiverse, and then I would put both IIWs in there, both the spring and the fall fall IIW.
Well, those are the nerdier ones.
Still happens in America.
Right? Yeah. So I only attended 2 IIWs, and after that, I immediately said, Roland, Toby, Alex, you go there. That's like, wow, it kills my brain. It's
an engineering conference.
Too engineering heavy, and that my puny salesy brain does not compute. So
yeah, it punches above its weight class in terms of venues, I think, because it's not a business conference.
Exactly.
And it's a vendor collaboration and kind of just a collaboration event. Yeah, I think maybe wallets for agents, if we have wallets for organizations. So, but that's the type of crazy thought that happens at IOW. But anyway, yeah, let's try and get EIC 2027 debrief on the schedule. That sounds like a plan. And yeah, so I definitely am feeling that I missed out on something. And next year I'm definitely going to try and be there. But whether or not I'm there, we can definitely do the debrief.
I'd be totally in for that.
And I know you'll be there.
I will be there doing the pre-conference Identity Beer, hopefully with 2 local hosts. I'm not spilling the beans here, but I'm looking forward to see a few new chapters, especially one in Berlin, and I have my hopes up for that.
So just quick announcement, the next episode, we're back to AI stuff. I feel like 5 out of 6 episodes have had AI in the title. So we're back on this bandwagon. I think this is a product talk from a vendor about how they're, but anyway, I like the idea of taxonomies and discovery. And I think that's an interesting part of the problem. So back to AI next week. Quick reminder, please follow Identity Office Hours on LinkedIn or YouTube. That really helped us get the word out, and the LinkedIn and YouTube algorithms really mean, so we need all those likes and follows. with that, I will say, Sebastian, it's been a pleasure to get to visit you with you, at least virtually. If I'm not able to imbibe one of those beers, I'll definitely look for Roland and try and
Yes, do
unload one
that.
of those some of the precious cargo. But thank you so much for being a guest, Sebastian.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me, and to all of you out there, have a good time and enjoy all the upcoming episodes, and especially at Ediverse and everything happening in the US. And looking forward to see you on this side of the pond if that's possible.